are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman, exclusively on ABC Amber TV.
Mama, you're kind. Mama, you're beautiful. Mama, you good. Mama, you're wonderful. No woman like you, Mama. No woman like you, Mama. Thank God for you, Mama. Thank God for you, Mama. 'Cause you gave me life, oh Mama, queen of my life, oh Mama. I go love you for life, oh Mama. 'Cause you love me so, oh Mama. From small begin, I never forget all the suffer when you suffer for me. Oh yeah, yeah. All the pain and the troubles where I put you through. I remember when money no be there and chop no be there for her. You be the try your best. You go run around, you find us something where we go chop. When I dey sick, you know the sleep, you go the cry all night. You go hold me tight, start to pray, say God make you have my oh Lord. Ooh, I wo ye choma. Afunga na bere ye funga choma. Ambama na bere ye ambama choma. Enga na chinum ye ga choma. Mama, I wo ye choma. Afunga na bere ye funga choma. Ambama na bere ye ambama choma. Enga na chinum ye ga choma. Ye ga choma, mama. Enga na chinum ye ga choma. Chinum ye ga choma. Oh, you gave me life, oh Mama, queen of my life, oh Mama. I will love you for life, oh Mama, 'cause you love me so, oh Mama. Ale mama, selelelele. Ale mama, selelelele. Ale mama, shekelelelele. Ale mama, you're my motivation. You gave me the best education, mama. The song where I sing I'm for you, now it's special dedication to you. Oh yeah, I know say every night and day you pray say make a mama. The God where you the pray I'm for heaven done. Give me this inspiration, mama. The song where I sing I'm for you, now to show my appreciation to you. Ubi ya wo ye choma. Afunga na bere ye funga choma. Ambama na bere ye ambama choma. Enga na chinum ye ga choma. Mama wo ye choma. Afunga na bere ye funga choma. Ambama na bere ye ambama choma. Enga na chinum ye ga choma. Chinum ye ga choma. Chinum ye ga choma. Ye ga choma. You gave me life, oh Mama, queen of my life, oh Mama. I will love you for life. I will love you, Mama, 'cause you love me so, oh Mama. You gave me life, oh Mama, queen of my life, oh Mama. I will love you for life, oh Mama, 'cause you love me so, oh Mama, Mama, selelele. Ale mama, selelele.
Welcome to the Horizon. I think we're having some technical issues with our host. Well, let me seize this opportunity to greet everyone watching us till our host comes back. This is Dr. Patience Abiedu. I'm a guest today on the Horizon. I want to start by greeting everyone watching us. Lady Casey, are you on now, Lady Casey? You're on. I know we're having some technical issues from your end. I can see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think it's an image and the sound. They are not synchronizing, but I can hear you clearly.
Proceed.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, good evening, Amazonians. Yes, it's all back now. Thank you for joining us once again on the horizon. Today, Friday, the 11th of August. We are here once again to express the voice of the Amazonian woman. And we want to all of us who are joining us on the program, please make sure you share as you and invite others to come and join us as we focus today on an aspect of our history that we may have forgotten or we don't know about. And also move on to the aspects of negotiation and the different um, discussion and conversation that have happened in recent times, the significance of it to our struggle. Also, would like to hear your participation in that if you're watching us from all the social media platforms. And today, obviously, I'm here with the Secretary of State for Women Services, Dr. You're welcome, and I know you did the show before I quickly join in. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Lady Casey. I hope your internet uh, situation gets resolved soon because I know you have a lot of information for us today as we proceed with the show. Let me seize this opportunity to greet everyone watching, those in the home front, those in ground one, and all of you in the diaspora. Just want to remind everyone that the horizon is here to stay the course because of the pain our people have gone through. We should never forget the over 50,000 of our people that have lost their lives. We should never forget the thousands and thousands of people that are refugees in neighboring Nigeria, Ghana, and other African nations and the world at large. We should never forget the thousands of our people that have been maimed by the vicious La Republique terrorists. We should never forget our thousands of girls and women that have been raped by this. We should never forget our children that have not had a decent education since this war started. We should never forget our brothers and sisters that are lamenting in La Republique dungeons just for being Southern Cameroonians. That is the only crime they committed, for being born a Southern Cameroonian, Ambazonian. We should never forget all of them and realize that we have to do what each and every one of us can do, be it sacrificing on the ground, in the home front, financially, or helping our ARFs, be it contributing financially in the diaspora. We all have a part to play. Even those who are our elites living in La Republique land, they can find a way to assist if they are willing to. So, Lady Casey, I just start to put things in perspective for people to understand why we are here why the Horizon exists, because we want to fight this war to the bitter end. And it takes all of us doing our own part. Thank you so much. I will take a cue from you next. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I just like to emphasize on the part that we all have a role to play in our liberation. And I would bring our attention to some of the kind of say liberation fights or people, other Africans coming together, asserting their freedoms over neo-colonial rules and colonial powers and oppressors across Africa. In the past 2 3 weeks, we have seen um, what's happening in Niger and what has been going on in Burkina Faso, Mali, and other African countries trying to gain their autonomy from all these indirect um, superpowers that have countries in poverty for many. Now, Amazonia is not any different. Our cause are different. Our aims and objectives are different, but the very spirit required to achieve all these different results are similar. So it is very important that every Amazonian, every Cameroonian, and I would like to remind those who think every time I get the chance that it is not some people's thing, it's not that one thing. Whether you are part of it, whether you play your role or not, you will be affected. And you may have been affected already. So it is only wise for you to take a conscious position to ensure that our liberation is sooner than later, because we've paid so much of our blood this far. And if we get all of your participation, it would get to our expected results and end sooner than later. So on that note, on the horizon, we previously had a conversation with Dr. Lobarty, Dr. Bridget Tape of history, how we ended where we are. We started with the plebiscite. We talked about the era where just after we walked out of the House of Enugu, where our leaders then walked out of the House of Enugu, how they governed themselves, and how things got to the plebiscite. And we would continue that conversation today because it was such an interesting conversation. And this is why we need to know the details of these things, because most of the sections and part that we read on how the leaders became divided, corrupted, and how Foncha acted in terms of the plebiscites and how what the proposals were, and the little details of the conversations and interaction with that happened with our leaders, with the British government, the Queen, and the Republic, and all those interactions, those details are necessary so that we know how to maneuver our way in the diplomatic fronts. It is one of the most important reasons why we must know that. And it will also give us a clear understanding of the mind and intentions of La Republique, because it did not start today. So that's why we will continue to ensure, because if we are staying the course with ignorance of how it started, or where the issue, how it was, we might make so much blunders.
Absolutely.
Okay, I would, like to employ you to read some of the segments on build up to the Fumban conference and what were the proposals and what happened, some conversations around that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lady Casey. So, this document I want to read, it's really from the West Common Archives. It says Fumban Conference, 17th of July to 21st of July 1961, the complete set. But we'll not go through all of it today. We're going to read bit by bit, and hopefully we will be able to complete this during different sessions of the Horizon. The first session that took place on the 17th of July 1961, this is what President Ahijo read during the opening of the session. He says, in declaring the conference open, the president of the Cameroon Republic said, remember, he was already the president of a country that had gained its independence on the 1st of January 1961. He says, I am particularly happy to welcome you today on this corner of Cameroon soil, which from so many points of view is dear to our hearts. The Bamoun, whose ruler, our friend Sultan Seydu, I want to thank most heartily for the way he has received us, is in fact, par excellence, a region where people would like to meet as much for the hospitality of its inhabitants as for the serene atmosphere which reigns there. We are certain that this atmosphere shall be favorable to our talks, for we have great need this day for profound wisdom in order to make of the reunification of our two territories an achievement that shall answer to the high hope that we ourselves and our people have nourished for many years. I want you to pay attention to the word that he used, reunification, Lady Casey.
Mhm.
In less than 3 months from now, the union between us shall be an accomplished fact, and we should prepare for it with the faith and the seriousness that such a task requires. We know that whatever may be our desire to sweep aside all obstacles, many technical difficulties remain to be overcome, as we shall see as the work goes on. This is not to discourage us, for already we know that solid constructions are never accomplished with a sweep of the hand, but it is essential that whatever may have been the respective positions held before the referendum, we approach all these questions with total goodwill, that we approach them with neither regret nor bitterness. The majority have clearly taken their stand, and there is no other thing to do today than to respect the will of the people by building for them a future within the framework that are fit. In a question of this nature, there should be neither victor nor vice. For our mission is not to defend personal positions, but to make the best of our experience and our abilities to construct a reunified Cameroon that shall be organized and prosperous. Keeps on using the word reunified. I appeal to all my fellow countrymen from across the Mongo that whether they be of the majority or of the minority, whether they defended positions that were accepted or rejected during the plebiscite, I appeal to them to turn resolutely henceforward towards the future with all sincerity. The Cameroons of tomorrow needs all its children, and none would be considered redundant who is prepared to participate loyally in the common task. Gentlemen, the principal object of this gathering is to study together the important outlines of our future constitution. You know that even before the referendum and since then, during our talks with Mr. Foncha, we chose a federal framework. Why? Let me pause here, Lady Casey. Let me pause here. He has said quite a few things that could be challenged. Number one, he keeps on using the word reunification.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that really insulting because he's putting this in a perspective that we were one together, so we are coming back. But that was never the case. Because if you want to bring the history of the German Cameroon, as we've heard several times on our ABC platform, then you're going to include all the other nations that were part of German Cameroon.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case. Then you include even the part of Cameroon, of Southern Cameroon, the Northern Cameroon that went to Nigeria. They would be part of the picture. So this word of reunification to give them the strength, to give them the argument that we're on the right course was already faulty from the beginning because it was not true. It was not a question of reunification. It was a question of two people that had separate origins, separate structure from the fact that we were under the British Trust Territories. We're taught in English. We had the common law. Our educational system was quite different. Nothing that French Cameroon had ever experienced. So don't tell me now that you're planning for what the framework of the country will look like on October 1st, that we were one together. Let me continue. Why this formula? So he's also said that they had several meetings with Foncha. Even before that referendum question was asked, whether we want to join La République du Cameroon or Nigeria during the plebiscite. It was really a plebiscite per se, and we chose to join join Cameroon. That even at that time, they had been having discussions, and the agreement was that it would be a federal framework. Why this formula? Here, he says something which is true. It was because linguistic, administrative, and economic differences do not permit us to envisage seriously any reasonable state of unitary and centralized type. So he's already saying here that because of our linguistic differences, the way we govern ourselves administratively, and our economic differences, we are not able to come together as one country with a centralized type of government.
Yeah, let me just throw in something in there.
Go ahead,
And this is some of the things that some people in French Cameroonians need to understand, that even Aijo understood that we were different, and he knew they realized, they know that we were different. So now, where did the twist come where they decide to centralize? um their leader said, Pobia did mention that they tried, the reason why they scatter our institutions and all our banking and our economic structures and our administrative structures that we have within Southern Cameroon is because their plan changed to assimilate us, to turn us into francophonized us, and it has failed woefully, and they have admitted that. So I just thought to remind our people why it is by fire, by force, we would regain our independence. You can carry on. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was because a confederal system, on the other hand, being too loose, would not favor the close coming together and the intimate connection which we desire. A federal structure, therefore, would be the only one which suits our particular situation. For I want to emphasize here very strongly that it is not our purpose to build in the absolute an ideal state cut off from its root. Neither is it to prepare a constitution based on abstract theories. We must look reality squarely in the face without dissimulating in our eyes that which divides us in our daily life, in spite of the union of our hearts. These realities leave us only a restricted margin in which to work if we wish that our institutions should answer to our needs. Within this margin, we are at liberty to choose this or that solution, this or that formula. We're here today to make that choice, and I do not doubt that in making it, we shall keep in view the general interest of our fatherland. Now, when you say our fatherland, why would you even say our fatherland, right? Because we are really different. They have their fatherland, we have our own fatherland. It's not one fatherland. But let me read on. In any case, I would not wish, and I hope you would share my feelings that we should sacrifice too much to rhetoric and the taste for theorizing. Our experience, though still in its infancy together with that of others, has proved to us that the texts we elaborate are insignificant when put side by side with the spirit that shall give them life, the spirit that shall animate us when we shall be applying them. This spirit, I am sure, shall be the spirit of cooperation and brotherhood. We know that the onward march of nations is not without obstacles, not without frictions, being the diverse parts that compose them. Even long established states often show us this. There is no question, therefore, of pretending that different difficulties shall never arise between us. Yet it is not necessary nor even useful to envisage to elaborate a mechanism just to avoid it. What we should attempt to do is to construct a framework that shall permit us to give life to our national community so that our daily existence should be dominated by a profound understanding. We wish that this framework should be adapted to the necessities of a modern state that we want to realize. It should correspond to the exigencies of our economic development and our national union. But it should not, however, be cut off from its past. In the life of a country which is to go ahead, there should be no brutal break with those institutions which constitute the very sources of its existence. A tree without roots soon dies. Our roots are the Cameroon people. We should take into considerations as most their aspirations towards progress and the future of their attachment to those traditions which for centuries would be to launch into a vain adventure. Every social group should rise. Every social group we know, this is a, okay, every social group should raise up its own institutions. And in Africa, particularly, we know that the family and the group ruled by the chief are essential to our collective life. At the end of the great family that is Cameroon we cannot afford to neglect the fundamental. Our old traditions have acquired their character of nobility, and I salute on this institution. And I salute on this occasion that traditional rulers who are here to represent these institutions. Mind you, this conference, we had traditional rulers present. However, I wish to tell them that in the world in which we live today, nothing can afford to stand still. all institutions can only survive by living and adapting themselves. Otherwise, they soon appear to be cut off, out of date, and overprivileged are swept away. We should be able to find, I am sure, the means to make our infant Cameroon live and grow without rejecting its past, the means to give it the strength which shall open it to the gateway of the future. So that's where he ends.
Who there's just so much to unpack from there. Um,
Yes, there is a lot to unpack because he also is telling us that he respects the tradition that we have already with our chiefs. We're also invited to this conference. I think maybe I should have even mentioned the participants so that we know the House of Chiefs that were present. The Fon of Bafut was present during this conference, the Fon of Bali, the Fon of Mancon, the Fon of So, Chief Kimboksi, Chief Wu, Chief Oben, Chief Ebanja, and Chief Dipoko. Those were the chiefs that were present, House of Chiefs. So he's giving them
yes.
he's giving them the respect that they deserve, but he's also telling them that be ready that some changes may eventually happen because just being a traditional ruler, you cannot expect things to remain the same. Otherwise, you will not be growing in a society that is supposed to be changing or evolving. You want to say something, then I can read what Honorable J.N. Foncher said.
Yes, I want to say something, and if anybody who was watching our previous conversation, we read a lot about the deliberations, the meetings, and the conversations that um Foncha and Aijo had before this conference, and just at the events just after the plebiscite and during the plebiscite. You will find out that most Southern Cameroonians realized what that Fumban conference was, and they already knew that this was a trap. It was a setup. So that's very captivating, all-rounded general message from Aijo at that time in that conference was to pacify the Southern Cameroonians who were already seeing danger in becoming one with La République. And that's why he told them that, even that's why he started by addressing those who did not agree to the plebiscite results.
Right.
He mentioned that in his almost the sentence started his address. So this is to tell us that he was fully aware and he was just playing politics. He said some very considerate and good intention like things that sounds like somebody with goodwill and good intention, but all their action after that shows that they had no good intention for Amazonia, for the Southern Cameroon. They had no, he mentioned maintaining the culture, the tradition, maintaining the differences of our past. We'll find different ways of, uniting as a people, respecting our differences in terms of culture, nation administration. And, he mentioned all these great things. And these are some of the things that if those who call themselves federalists were serious, these are some of the things that should be telling La Republic to at least hold on to the word of their late president. And if they truly are fighting for federation, but obviously we know they are just window dressers. But coming to coming to my next point of why all the events before that address and all the events after that address just make that particular speech or address to the Fumba, to the attendees of the Fumban conference, irrelevant. It was just a speech to make the people lose their guard because they were already alert of the fact that this La Republique people are coming for them and the interest of the Southern Cameroons. And that was exactly that happened. And Foncha enabling Aijo made like French Cameroon to, enable French Cameroon to easily take over, more or less recolonize Southern Cameroons. And this is where we are today, because the fight started immediately after they realized it, that conference, that this is what has happened. And we are continuing it until we get the actual result. That's just what I wanted to add to it.
Yeah, thank you, Lady Casey. In fact, I even noticed that they were already giving too much authority to this Ahijo, because if eventually we're supposed to be
Mhm.
states of equal partners, then they should have drawn a lottery or some sort of uh, yeah, a lottery for to see who opens the session. He's opened the session as who? As the leader of Southern Cameroons, because that's what it appears to me. They were coming together as equals to find a way forward. They should have drawn a lottery and say, okay, we'll see who is going to talk first, and then talk to me. Don't patronize me, because he's talking to me as if he's already my boss. That's what I see from this
Yep,
communication, you know. So let me
absolutely.
read what Honorable J.N. Foncha said next. Addressing Your Excellency, Your Highnesses, Honorable Ministers and Gentlemen, on behalf of the delegations from the Southern Cameroons and myself, I wish to respond to the address of His Excellency President A. Ahijo in welcoming us in Fumban. We have all been longing to see this important town in the Republic of Cameroon, because its people have very close dealings with the people of the Southern Cameroons. It is only of recent date that we realize that Fumban is on the side of Cameroon with a K, formerly under French trusteeship. So they just realized it. They say it is only of recent day that we realize that Fumban is on the side of Cameroon K, formerly under French trusteeship. So this tells me that at a particular time, maybe they thought that Fumban was part of the former British Southern Cameroons. That's what that paragraph tells me, because that's when they just
Mhm.
realized it. And maybe that's why they chose that as the site for the meeting, that it felt somehow neutral. It is important that at a conference for the drawing up of a constitution for unification, now he says unification, and he just said reunification. Foncha says unification. See the difference right there? We should remember
Yeah.
those who have brought about this great event, which is in the process of being fulfilled. It is true that all the tribes in the Republic of Cameroon have contributed in one way or the other in unification, but the people of Fumban have done it in a special way. They have never taken serious notice of the frontier restrictions, but have continued to move peacefully to the southern Cameroons, where they freely remain and build and marry. They thus have strong family ties on both sides, and it is a credit to Fumban that its girls and boys marry freely with other tribes. The Sultan of Fumban himself has taken a personal interest in the unification by his visits and participation in the affairs of the people of the Southern Cameroons. It is therefore most befitting that the first important conference should be held in Fumban. We congratulate the Sultan and his people for the warm reception accorded us. So I just want to emphasize this point again, that it was only recently then that they even realized that Fumban was part of the French Cameroon. All along, they probably thought that it was part of West Cameroon, or in those days, Southern Cameroon, because it was not yet West Cameroon. I'll read on. The present conference is an important one in the history of unification. Again, remember, he is using the word unification, and Ahidjo was using the word reunification. The present conference is an important one in the history of unification. For the first time after 44 years of separation and development under two different masters with different cultures, we, with our traditional rulers, have come together to consider the method of coming together once more. The desire to come together has overcome years of separation, and it is my hope that we can overcome all other obstacles that might present themselves in our task to produce a workable constitution which will satisfy the wishes of the people who have voted for it. Not only are the whole Cameroon with a K people looking up to us, but also other unfortunate divided people of the world are looking to us to lead the way. We should therefore be determined in the spirit of compromise to produce good results within the next few days. In our previous discussions with His Excellency President Ahidjo, we have kept in mind that in our desire to rebuild the Cameroon nation, we must not, however, forget the existence of the two cultures. We have, therefore, proposed a form of government which will keep the two cultures in the areas where they now operate to blend them in the center. The center is, therefore, deliberately given only very limited subjects, while the states are left to continue largely as they are now. So let me repeat that. Let me read that again. The center is therefore deliberately given only very limited subject, while the states are left to continue largely as they are now. The form of government is one thing, while culture is another. While we keep the form of government now envisaged, the foreign cultures will have to take care of themselves. And I hope by the process of evolution to be replaced by an indigenous one. Now, I have a problem with that. Let me read on. Our main task is therefore to produce a constitution for a federal form of government, taking into consideration the peculiar circumstances in which we have found ourselves. It should be understood that, however much we try, we cannot produce a perfect constitution within the short time at our disposal. But we must be able to produce one which, for our purpose, is complete to build the Cameroon nation on 1st October and to serve as the basis for further improvement. In order that we must leave the conference with something concrete, I appeal for the support of everybody present. The drawing up of the constitution is a matter for Cameroonians themselves, and it would be foolish to look to anyone else for help. I therefore hope that we can find compromise by reasoning together. Our communiques produced before the plebiscite and used for the enlightenment campaigns set out in broad outline what we must do. These communiques were fully explained and understood by the people who voted for joining the Republic of Cameroon. Our constitutional proposals have followed broadly the directions indicated therein, and it's my hope that they will be represented by both sides. The negotiations for unification have been carried out in the most brotherly atmospheres, and the present one, just as important, should go the same way. The target for the Federation of Cameroon as a United States is very near. Our discussion should be focused on the important points which must be included in the Constitution to make it possible for the cooperation, for the Federation to be born. I therefore, on my part, seek the cooperation of everybody present at this conference to forget the past so that we may work as a united body for the achievement of a revived Cameroon nation. So, Foncha has mixed messages. I don't know whether you get it. He's talking
Mm-hmm.
about us realizing that we have unique backgrounds that make us somehow different. But he's talking about coming to a point one day where we are one Cameroon with a K. Remember, Cameroon with a K was German Cameroon. And you cannot really put that in place without talking about Togo, Mali, and all the other countries that were part of German Cameroon. And he's somehow had meetings. You guys discussed it during the meeting, the Horizon show when you had Professor Bridget Tibo and Dr. Winnie Lobadi. That Foncha had meetings previously with the other side, probably without really the involvement of people like Endele or Joa to assist. So he had probably morphed his own frame of thought where it was more one that would favor French Cameroon, what they were looking for. Although, on one hand, he's saying that we should remember that we are unique people. But I don't know if you want to say something about this lady Casey before I read what Dr. E.M.L. Endele said.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we have picked up on a very important and interesting point out of that. The fact that, you know, first thing you picked up was the fact that uh, Aijo was using reunification, fantasy unification. Um, also, uh, you know, the point we all have to note is that this conference started with the fact that each culture will be respected, and Foncha was positive and hopeful that we'll find with the same energy that Aijo said. But Foncha was very, very, in this case, I don't know whether it was blindsided of the manipulations. And that's why he too was also going with the same similar tone, and because his message, like you said, contradictory, is contradictory because he knew what he had agreed already with Aijo, which is why he lamented in 1999.
Right.
So because he knew what he did in the background, and that's why his own message could not be consistent, it could not flow with the best interests of the Southern Cameroons. So that's just what I wanted to say concerning that.
Okay. All right. Let me read what Dr. E.M.L. Endele said.
Okay.
Speaking on behalf of the opposition in the House of Assembly of the Southern Cameroons, Dr. Endele said that a constitution was an instrument for guiding the rights and privileges of the people. The making of a constitution was not the exclusive right of the government of the day, but all parties should contribute their share and could thus be associated with the decisions taken. He emphasized that the opposition members of the Southern Cameroons delegation had come with open minds and were prepared to work for the good of the conference. He expressed his regret that the document containing the draft revision of the Cameroon Constitution had reached the delegates only this morning, and he therefore asked that time might be allowed for its study and for discussion by the delegates. He observed that the things which had divided the two parties of the Cameroons were not made by the people. He felt that with good and determination, a satisfactory formula for the conference could be found. He urged, however, that too much haste should not be made in reaching a decision which would have far reaching effects on the people of the Cameroons. He said that the delegates of the Southern Cameroons had come as a team and hoped to return as a team. He extended his gratitude to His Highness the Sultan of Fuban and his people for the welcome which they had accorded to the delegates. It was, he said, a pleasure to discuss Cameroon affairs on Cameroon soil. He felt that if conferences of this nature had been held earlier, no difficulty would have arisen about drawing up a suitable constitution for unification. That's all he said. But something very
And
important before you speak.
go on.
He lamented that they were just giving a draft constitution only that morning, which we're going to read. We're going to read it and probably end in a few minutes and talk about the Canadian, because this conversation will continue again. I really think that people will have to understand this when we read everything that was going on, because you cannot really plan for a future if you don't know it, so that people understand exactly why we are where we are today. The fact that they were giving that constitution just that morning meant that they were just going to go there and say yes or no and not really have time to debate and put their own additions into the matter. That was already a sign that La République du Cameroun already came, or Ahidjo already came to just absorb us and not really consider us as partners, as equal partners. That was already very telling what was done to them that morning. Go ahead, Lady Casey.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just take it on a bit further. You know, Ian and Endeli literally saw through everything, but Foncha had already sold Southern Cameroons to La République du Cameroun at this time, at this point. Which is why he was, and those that were with him knew what was going on and pretend to be part of the Southern Cameroon team, which Eneli was referring to, but was not acting as a teammate. I mean, we can see that what happened with the coup plotters in the interim government. Some of all of you know those who are coup plotters and how involved they were with the activities and affairs of the interim government and what they showed us what they showed us when they got the opportunity. And that is just the same thing in a different capacity. People, Foncha honestly did Southern Cameroon so bad. And that's why he died regretting, because he saw the effect of his singular action and those who supported him at that time. And Endeli had tried in so many, in very few words, in that his address, to call the attention to the fact that this thing should not be rushed, because he has understood the intention, but the other ones that were greedy and all blinded to the schemes of La République could not give it a chance. And because he was the opposition at the time, and with the way most Africans fight for power, saw it as if he was trying to take an opportunity to exert influence where he shouldn't. So, and here we are dealing with the consequences of not listening to Endele on different occasion in those days. And there's also something he mentioned. Um, he's mentioned the fact that it was sent to them that morning. It was they shouldn't be in a haste, and he also agreed. He was also in agreement, even though he did not originally want that unification, but he joined the team as a decent team player, an agreement that they want the unification, but it should be done thoroughly and properly. And that was totally ignored and neglected. And here we are having the effects of that. And I always like to stretch this history to recent events, to the consistent attitude of French Cameroon to Southern Cameroon over the years, from the day of the Fumban conference until presently, how they kill our people with no conscience, mercilessly. And even the people of French Cameroon have this inherent hate, anger, and bitterness towards the people of Southern Cameroon for what we did to them. Nothing. We just exist as a people. We know ourselves, our culture, and our values. And all of them. And that's why there have never been any outrage within French Cameroon in all the killings, even of babies, that has been going on in the Southern Cameroon. In fact, they have been encouraging their talks in the name of military to do these things. And why do I always relate these things? Because we need to know that the only option for a Amazonian or Southern Cameroonians to live with any sense of pride and dignity is total separation and liberation from French Cameroon.
Right.
Thank you, Mape.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this document is very rich. It's very enlightening, and I really hope people are listening. If you don't find time to listen today, you'll find time to listen some other day. It's going to give you a grasp of what our forefathers went through, and the foundation that they set ended up being a very faulty foundation, and that has led us to where we are. And this is what I just said in his closing remarks to adjourn for that session. So, in his speech adjourning the conference until the 18th July, President Naijo thanked the Premier of the Southern Cameroons and Dr. Endele for their speeches. He said that he fully understood Dr. Endele's wish to have an opportunity to study the draft revision of the Cameroon Constitution. So remember, this was a revision of La République du Cameroon's constitution that they revised it a little bit to accommodate the Southern Cameroons. He explained that he fully understood the importance of a constitution and agreed with Honorable Foncha that a constitution was something which would grow gradually and could be improved as time went on. Therefore, there is, he explained, no perfect constitution, and the goodwill of the persons who apply the text of a constitution is more important than the text itself. Well, I don't think I agree with that. The goodwill of the people is more important. The text itself is very important because that's the governing structure that you need for generation to generation. The goodwill of the people may die and go, but if the information that is in the text is something that binds you forever, then you are doomed. So that is not a fair statement. He wished to
And that's a
reassure.
statement. And that's a statement he used to distract the people from paying attention to details.
Exactly.
That way, I mean, the part of the manipulative tactics that he used.
Yeah. He wished to reassure Dr. Endele that although the methods of elaborating a constitution may be different in the Republic of Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons, the principles underlying the constitution are nevertheless the same. He said that the people of the Republic would have an opportunity to examine the constitution, and it would not therefore be a product solely of the president. and the council adjourned. So we'll end here briefly because the next meeting went through the articles, which we will have to talk about. Or maybe we should just read a few of them, because I think the next, we have maybe about 15 minutes to talk about the Canadian thing. So let me just read on. So paraphrasing what Ahijah just said now, what I take from this is already somebody who has asserted himself as superior, right? He is coming as the leader. Because under normal circumstances, there should have been an opportunity for Southern Cameroonians and La République to decide that who's going to be that first person to lead that federation. How long will that person be there? And when that person is out, the term of that person, the next person will be from the other area. Those details were not really put. Even if they were going to read this constitution to the end, they were not really fully outlined, because we realized that what happened on September 30th, 1961, is that French Cameroon just took over. They just came in our land. They just took over.
Yeah.
And our forefathers who were leaders then, Sir Foncha, Honorable Foncha, and Honorable Joa, and Endele, had no voice. If at all, their voice was just in our little area, but they had no voice that had to do with the federal voice itself. They didn't count. So much so that even if something were to happen to Ahijah at that time, it wasn't clear that Foncha was going to be the president of the federation, although each state governed its own self, had its own dealings in terms of economic growth, educational growth, social growth. Each state was independent, but in terms of a federal government, would French Cameroon had allowed a Southern Cameroonian to serve as the national leader? It was not really clearly defined in that constitution, and that's what the Southern Cameroonian delegation wanted. But they already they knew what they were doing from the beginning. I feel so sorry for it's just that we were children, right? We didn't know what was going on, but now that we're reading, and I pray that there comes a time where this information is in the history books for our children to see what happened, so that they never get into a position where somebody usurps their right and makes them feel as if they are second best. So just to put things in perspective, let me just read this section that had to do with the first part of the Constitution, and then we'll end this section. Okay, Lady Casey?
Yes.
Okay. So the meeting, the Southern Cameroon's delegation, first session, 17th of July, 1961, continues. The meeting began its consideration of the draft revision of the Cameroon Constitution. So they are trying to revise the Cameroon Constitution. It was considered that this part of the preamble, which referred to the fundamental rights, should become a definite chapter of the Constitution in the same manner as in the present Constitution of the Southern Cameroons. There should be definite provision that any law which did not conform with the requirement of fundamental human rights should not be enforceable. It was considered that The reference to the preamble relating to economic growth appearing on page 2 should be excluded as limiting the sources from which external financial assistance could be obtained. With regards to the penulated paragraph referring to the Cameroonians living outside of the Federation, it was considered that these recitals were better omitted since it would appear that a decision of the United Nations was being criticized in the Constitution. However, in order that it should be possible at some future date to reabsorb the former Northern Cameroons under United Kingdom trusteeship, it was considered that the Constitution itself should make express provision for the alteration of federal and state boundaries. So they are thinking that it was a possibility that the Northern Cameroon that went to Nigeria may be part of it. Because at this time, they didn't realize that, well, the northern part had already voted to join Nigeria. So I'm not sure why that paragraph was put there. Anyway, article number 1, paragraph number 1. It was considered that the word Cameroon should be adopted both in English and French versions of the Constitution. So Cameroon here is spelled Cameroon, should be adopted both in the English and the French versions of the Constitution. So they have two versions. Paragraph 2, the precise meaning of the word indivisible was not clear. Here we go. The Honorable Attorney General undertook to discover its meaning. It appeared, however, that the paragraph would be better if the words were omitted. So this is what I want to tell people now. Originally, they had this word indivisible in that constitution that was supposed to be adopted and be part of, and including Southern Cameroons. When they finally had the constitution that we went over with Barrister Mesa a few weeks ago, that word indivisible was removed and replaced with democratic. They wanted the word indivisible right there. It was a setup, but thank God, at least our forefathers were smart enough to make sure that that word indivisible was removed. So today we say that La République du Cameroun is indivisible, but La République du Cameroun and Southern Cameroons are divisible or is divisible. Paragraph 4, 5, 7, and 8. It was considered that the question of a flag, motto, and anthem should be considered by a special committee. Paragraph 6. It was considered that the seat of the government should be at Douala. So originally they wanted the seat of the government to be at Douala. How it ended up in Yaoundé, only God knows, right? I don't know if we knew all this before, because Douala made more sense. It was closer to the former British Southern Cameroon's territory than Yaoundé. On the question of nationality, it was considered that state nationality was not a matter on which it was necessary to take a determined stand. That one is iffy. We may have to have our barristers on to talk about it some other time. All right, I'm going to read one more article and then we're going to end this topic and go to the next topic. Article number 2. The Honorable Attorney General suggested that the qualifications of electors should be written into the Constitution. He emphasized that it was most important that these provisions should cover such points as qualifications of voters and of elected members. There was no need to write in the electoral procedure, since this could be covered by electoral law. As regards the second paragraph of Article 2, universal franchise could be dealt with under Article 2, particularly dangerous in the word indirect. It merely covered the sort of contingency where governments, for example, had to nominate a commission which, although not directly elected by the people, was nevertheless indirectly chosen to be chosen by the people because the people who voted appointed them were themselves elected. After discussion, it was agreed that paragraph 3 of the Article 2 should be amended as follows. The ballot is secret and all citizens 21 years or over shall have equal voting rights. We'll end here for today so that we can go to the next topic. But in concluding this part, because we're going to continue next time on the horizon, we really want to go through this, the important part of this FOMBAN conference, so that people realize how our forefathers were deceived. They were put in a very difficult situation. And I think when I listened to the program that had Dr. that you guys had with Professor Bridget and Dr. Winnie Lobade, the question came up why they just did not reject and leave, just like they did the House of Enugu. Why they did not just do that when they realized that this was something that was not favorable for Southern Cameroons. So, Lady Casey, I know you want to conclude on this one. I know you're the host, but you're the host. Talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just like you were saying that, this document is very important for us to go through. I've stressed when I started the show, and the reason why we have to have total and detailed understanding of these events and what was said and who said what, and reading intentions and why, so that if we are making our arguments, we are going to be asked questions in any diplomatic fora. We will be asked questions, and some of these questions have come up in our diplomatic encounters with our people. And so when you know these things and you have the understanding, some people will say, "Ah, but Cameroon is one. Why do you people trying to separate this country? It's one." You will have a thorough and a factual answers and a response that is based on facts, real life happenings. So that's the reason why we have to know these things. Knowledge is and how you apply it. When you have the knowledge, you will know when and how to apply it for the better. So, on concluding this segment, it's just to remind our people once again that La Republique from the onset has never and will never have any good intention towards any individual of a Southern Cameroon origin. Their whole intention has been to francophonize the people of Southern Cameroon and to take over their territory, their identity, their culture, and basically erase from existence. And our struggle and our fight today is evidence that they have failed. And if any Southern Cameroonian is not conscious of the fact that they hate us and resent us for that, reasons why they kill with impunity, they kill our people with no reservations, is because they are realizing that they have failed in their efforts to place us under, and we are grown. They put us in the ground and we've grown like us. They didn't know we were seed and we are growing like with big trees and now we form a forest. And that will be our complete restoration. So, moving on to the next aspect of our discussion, and I've mentioned diplomatic encounter, diplomatic efforts, diplomatic conversations. Things have happened. We've had some, dialogues. We've had Swiss mediation. We've heard of the Canadian talks and the four people, and we've seen documents, signing documents flying. Yeah, about these different events. We've seen some people make statements that bring throw more light in some of the happenings that have happened in some of these conversations with La Republique or meetings with La Republique. If regarding the events and happenings, the war in Amazonia. And Mape, I will just come to you to give your perspective on some of the recent new information we are hearing, especially regarding the Canadian talks, and what do us Amazonians who are fighting to see that we're liberated, what should we be aware of the new? What should we know, and how should we participate to ensure this knowledge is for the benefit of our freedom cause?
Thank you, Lady Casey. So, to put things in perspective, let's remember exactly what happened on the 22nd of September 2019. We had a document that was signed by about eight or nine different movements agreeing to the Swiss talk, where they say that the Amazonia coalition team would represent Southern Cameroons uh, in a negotiated settlement with La République du Cameroun. Recently, some of you heard some revelations by the spokesperson. He used to be the spokesperson for IGOFC. I don't want to mention his name to give him relevance, but I think you know whom I'm speaking about. He came up with this revelation that when the Swiss talks was in place, President Sarko, who had invited these other leaders to be part of the process because he wanted to be inclusive, was really the main person. The interim government was really, for lack of a better word, the strongest movement in our struggle or in our fight for recognition. So sometime last year that we got word that La République had pulled out of the Swiss process. And then sometime early January, or I shouldn't say early, sometime in January, I think it was January 21st or so, we heard that the Canadians had accepted to facilitate the process to bring peace between La République du Cameroun, and they didn't really say Southern Cameroons. They more or less considered us as Northwest or Southwest people. But the revelation that we found out recently is that HD, which is an NGO that is working to help the facilitator by doing some groundwork, helping with finding out what is really happening, helping the process in making the teams come out with confidence building measures, things like that are important in a negotiation. That this same AG is an AG that was featured during the Swiss process. But the biggest revelation is that one individual, and I'm going to call his name, pardon me, Lady Casey, one individual that I believe is one of the impediments, one of the person that is blocking our journey Cho Ayaba, that when he realized that the Swiss government or AG had found out that President Sarko, the EIG, was the predominant force to reckon with in terms of the key party to negotiate with La République du Cameroon, he backed down. He started bashing the Swiss process, only for him to turn around 4 years later, because remember the Swiss process started in 2019. So 2019 to 2023, this year, is 4 years. Only for him to turn around and support the same process by a different country, Canada, with the same NGO, HD. Why? Because he wants to be the person on top. You guys remember that when this talk, Canadian talk came about, there was a communique that came out on the 21st of January that had 4 key signatures. It had the infamous Cho Ayaba I just mentioned. It had Yeremia, a branch of an IG that was not doing anything because the leader of this branch is Sissoko in jail, or Ayuk Tabi in jail. It has Ebenezer Akwanga, the so-called president of or leader of APLM, who at one point had left the struggle, and you really don't know what he's doing, but he's supposed to be a leader. And you had somebody called Emmanuel Taylor, who is really supposed to be representing Ambazonia coalition team. So at that time, when we saw this communique, we said that if you represent Ambazonia coalition team, why don't you just have one document signed by one person by Ambazonia coalition team? Why do you have all these separate signatures? The point I want to make today is that you had the Swiss process that was in 2019 that died last year, 2022. And now we have the Canadian process in 2023 that La République himself is saying that they never granted Canada to facilitate any peace talks. So they are saying that they are not part of it. But let's just say that that is political talk. Maybe they are doing something behind the scenes, but they don't want to put their names out there. Let's just give that to Canada, because the diplomacy, you never know. You know, you can say one thing today and tomorrow you're doing something else. So let's just give it for granted that maybe they are really in the process, but they say that they are not. The key point is this, Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonia, please listen to me and make your leaders accountable. Listen to me. Why would you subject yourself to a process where you have La République du Cameroon coming as a country with their president who's going to sign on that, yes, I'm part of this process. And in 2019, we had a team of about 7 or 8 people signing that document that they are part of Ambazonia coalition team. And then in 2023, you have a document signed by 4 people. One that is the Cho Ayaba that I hate to mention, but I need to mention his name so that people can start holding me account. The only way to hold this guy accountable is to just not be part of his network. Don't give him relevance. Leave anybody who is supporting Cho Ayaba. You're putting a nail on the coffin of Ambazonia. Listen to me. All those who are supporting Cho Ayaba, you're putting a nail on the coffin of Southern Cameroons. You are the one killing all our young people. The time that comes when he has no supporters is the time that Ambazonia begins to be free faster. We'll get our freedom with or without Cho Ayaba, but we want him to be out of the way because he's an impediment. So why would you want a document that is signed by by Bia or whoever is representing Bia, and another one signed by so many leaders of movements. Don't you think that it would be better? And I give our UN, Uchiba Nelson, a lot of credence, a lot of thumbs up here, because he makes this point over and over again, that your strength will be more if you have country to country, not country to movements. So we have the interim government. It was clear back then in 2019 when Ayabari didn't want to be part of the Swiss talk, that President Sako, the interim government, was very powerful. The people on the ground, the people in home front, they listen to the interim government. The interim government supports our refugees. The interim government supports our ARFs. But you never see any of these movements do anything for our people. In fact, they lead to the downfall of our movement. Right now, you must realize that people like Marianta, I hate to mention their names, and the other one, what was his name? Anu, are irrelevant. No, they had their high moment for one time when they started the coup, but they have fallen flat on the ground. They are nowhere to be heard. They are gone. So they are insignificant. President Sako and the interim government, the people's interim government, is standing tall, because nothing good can happen, nothing worthwhile, nothing long-standing can happen without the interim government having a say. So this big revelation about the Canadian thing is that this person that is a spokesperson for EGOVC has revealed to us that there were some people, one particular person who was so selfish that because he was not at the helm, was not the leader, he would bash the Swiss process, only to go now to the same NGO and support the Canadian process, because now he can put his name there, his signature, as one of these signatories to the process. But both of those will fail. The only time we'll have, I'm going to end here, the only time we'll have a process that will succeed is when you have just one signature. La République du Cameroon's representative, be it BIA or whoever they want to, and the interim government's representative, President Sako, or whoever he chooses to put there. Only one signature will sign on that agreement, and then the process will continue. That's what we are looking for. That's what we are fighting for in terms of diplomacy, in terms of having the point where you have a negotiated settlement. You need two key parties to sign. That's what we're fighting for. Thank you, Lady Casey.
Thank you. I would be rounding the show shortly. We're rounding up shortly, and Mape have already, touched on all the different dimensions in the recent talks and mediation processes that we had within the past 4 years, and made some powerful and very great suggestion to how we can achieve better outcome going forward. And because she said it in so many words and spoke for so long, maybe you may have missed the point or the great suggestion that she made. And this is what she said, that going forward, if we go a united front with one leader, which is an interim government, like an interim government of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia with the government of La République, and going towards negotiation and mediator, that then we have a better outcome to what we have had in the past. Um, and this is something every Southern Cameroon ambassador should think about. Just join your LGA and county. Let's strengthen our government, because they always use the excuse they don't want to talk. They don't know who to deal with. Though they know, but if we are going for a mediation or for a pre-talks or talks with La Republique with a document of more than one or two signature, La Republique, it gives them that reason, gives them that excuse to keep saying things like that. Um, so Patience, I would just like you to round up your comments for the show today, and then we would close the show and prepare for next week. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for watching us and listening to us today. That the Horizon is staying the course. This document on history on the Fumat conference, we'll continue reading it so you know the truth. The truth shall set us free. The truth shall make us smarter in terms of the future deliberations or future plans. And the goal is to have our nation the 55th nation in Africa or the newest nation in the world. That is our goal. Let's continue fighting. And please make those leaders that are irrelevant really stay irrelevant by joining your LGAs and working from within. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you. And before I round up the show, and I would just like to mention 1st of October activities and festivities and events are coming up. I have just left my Amazonia wrapper downstairs. So, but you know, it is it's going to be a great time for us to revitalize our revolutionary spirit. It's going to be a time for us to remind ourselves how far we have come and how far we still have to go. It's also a time for us to celebrate our culture, our identity, our uniqueness as a nation and as a people. So prepare for the 1st of October events near you. And in Europe, we will be having it in Berlin, in Germany. So it's going to be a fantastic time from the 28th of September right up to the 2nd of October. And our main events and activities is going to be on the 29th of September, on 30th of September, and the 1st of October that we will be having so many different activities to celebrate Amazonia and to rejuvenate our fighting spirit, and that only the women that will be staying the course, but the Amazonians within Europe would come out in their numbers to show that they are also still staying the course until our total liberation of Amazonia. Thank you all for joining us on the Horizon once again, and hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.
I hope the technician knows we're ending.
You are watching The Horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman, exclusively on ABC Amber TV.